How you doing?
Hey,
What's up,
It's
y'all? We
another
here. We
Wednesday.
how
here.
y'all doing?
Everybody's good.
I'm great. I'm in the winter wonderland.
Listen, I'm just gonna say this, okay? Kentucky, Florida, Atlanta, and Alabama. Send my weather back home, please.
I'm sorry. I kidnapped it and I'm keeping it.
I am missing it. I love the snow. And we got a little bit, but y'all been getting all our yum yums. Give me my stuff back.
No, I have adopted it. I have adopted it. Vine is used to the snow, so you know. But listen, guys, listen. You know, I was thinking about a moment in my life when I had to be about 10 or 11. And I was in my house, and my dad and I were getting ready to have dinner. My mother was at work. And my dad told me, Dav, get my plate. And I
Oh,
said,
what?
and now this at 10 years old, I was like, get your plate. I said, Dad, I said, can you say it a little nicer? He just wanted me to go get the actual plate so he could fix it. And I was like, Dad, can you say it a little nicer? And he was like, get the plate. I said, but Dad, I'm always wanting to say something, but I was like, Dad, you
Yeah,
can
that
say it a little
mouth.
nicer. It just wasn't, Dad, it just seems really mean and harsh. Before I knew it, I was running. He was running after me. I was running up the stairs. And now y'all know I was like in the brownstone. It was Nana, and then it was Graham's, my mother's mother, right?
Yeah.
Went past, kept going, got to the third level. And Graham opened the door. What's going on? So my father right behind me. I said, I just asked him to say it nice. He asked me to get a plate. You know what my grandmother said? Dad, go back down and get that plate. Now that made me think. I did all that running. He was on my tail, and I did that for nothing. Because certain parenting, they stick together back in the day. In my day, when I was being parented by my parents, they tend to have a village, and nobody was going to sway from that village. We were all in one. They were all in one sink.
It's
You
true.
weren't going to sway one and the other. They were together in that, and that leads me to parenting then and now throughout the generations. I don't know what experience y'all got, but be transparent and share if y'all like, or tell me some stories, or tell me what kind of parenting did you guys grow up with.
Well, I wanna make a comment though, because I think that you asking your dad, could he say it a little nicer, wasn't the wrong thing to say. Now, back then we were taught you do as I say
Mm-hmm.
and you don't correct me, which I don't agree with. I think that back then there were some methods that were and things that were said the wrong way, and we should have been able to say, "Hey, wait a minute. If you want me to do something, you can say, can you do this? But you can ask. So I don't think that you were wrong in what you said. I think that it was just the fact that in that generation, we were taught that you can't question anything. You couldn't question an adult. You couldn't question your parents. You just do as I say, and that's it. But in all honesty, when I look at, my parenting, I wanted my children to be able to come to me and tell me if I was wrong. If I was wrong, I'm wrong. I'll own up to it and I'll make it right, because that's what
Well,
formulates good relationships. I think that the parents of old felt like because they were the parent, you don't get to tell me that I did something wrong. But that's not really true, because even biblically, it says that you should not provoke your children to anger. So that means that you need to use the right words and say the right things and not provoke your children to anger.
but you know what,
Okay.
Vaughn?
Okay.
I think, what Dad was just trying to ask is if we had
Mm-hmm.
any examples where,
Exactly.
we in when we were growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but I do concur with you when you say I raised my children differently, because children were to be seen and not heard.
Mm-hmm.
You do as I say, like you said, as I do, not what I do. And I tried to raise my children where, don't do everything I say, well, okay, let me hear what you guys say. All right, don't, be kind of seen, so, it was a little more open. And sometimes we kind of dropped the ball,
Yeah.
you know, and let it
Yeah.
go too far, you know, and our kids just saying a bunch of stuff, you know. And
Yeah.
as time has gone on, I've noticed the change in the children.
Yeah, it's not a
From
matter.
us,
It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of then and now. And if we actually think it works, what we're doing now versus what we did then, I don't look at it as wrong or right. I don't. But I do look at how I was parented versus what I did when I was parenting. So we got some guests today, though, guys. We got Jennifer and we got the Roberts. So we're going to bring them up to join us and see what they got to say about this parenting thing.
hey, but just before they come on, y'all, if you're there listening, watching, please just love us, okay, and share. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good, cousins. Y'all looking good over there.
Thank you.
Good. It's nice to see y'all.
You as well.
Jen is having a little difficulties, but I guess she'll get it together. I got her up in the studio, but I don't see her. So
She'll be in.
There we go. Hi, Jen.
Hey, girl.
Hey. Hey, hey.
Hey, Roberts. I didn't get a chance.
Lady in red.
Yeah. All right. So, you know, the Cousins for Life, you know, Lady V, Lily, and Dabs Kirby Jersey here. We just wanted to get your input because, Jen, I know you have some children that you are currently raising and you were raised differently. I'm sure you have some stories. And so the Roberts, you two come from two different complete backgrounds. Yes. And I know you got a lot to share. And you guys are moving into your relationship of having kids soon. So we want to know what your input is. So Jen, let's start with you.
Oh my, starting with me.
Yeah, well, just how were you parented?
Correct.
Yeah, let's talk about how you were parented before we get into your parenting.
Remember who your mama is.
I don't know that lady. I don't know who she is.
We can take her out. No, sorry.
Oh yeah, we can silence her. Look.
So, well, for starters, I believe parenting, and this is just what I'm starting to experience. Parenting is different from your firstborn all the way to your lastborn.
But what about how you were parented?
That's first.
And that's where I'm the first.
Okay. All right.
So the way I was parented, I was the first go. So it was a little strict. It was a little, hey, these are the rules. There's no navigating against them. Do it or else. So now looking at my parenting, I hate to say that I kind of replicated the same thing. So my first, I tend to be a little bit like, hey, you know, get it together. Whereas the second child, I'm kind of like, let him eat it. He'll live.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that might be because of the age you were when you had your first child and the age you were when you had your second child? Or could it be the age difference in your children?
I don't think for me it's not the age difference between my children. It's the age difference with me. So in where I had my first child, where I was still spry, I was still, you know, able to get up. With the second child, I'm like,
hey, Miss Cheney,
I need a nap. I'm tired. Let him have it. So I think that plays a big part in how you parent, what stages of life you're in. So,
that's probably you're probably right, and that's what I saw on the internet. That's why they say, according to the internet websites, a few of them, that we're supposed to have kids at a younger age instead of when we get older. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I
don't know because I have friends. A lot of my friends had their children in their 40s, and I feel that they were more settled, they were more financially stable, and they were more patient with their children than some of us who had our children when we were younger. So I don't know if that's really true, because I thought that I became more patient when I had my children, the last two, than I was with the first two. You know,
Well,
so
yeah,
it
they
can
say
work
that.
kind of both ways, you know.
Jesus, they do say that. When I was younger, I remember in my 20s, I was about 25, and my doctor said to me, "You're gonna be an old maid. When you gonna have a baby?" I was like, "I'm 24. I'm getting ready to be 25." You know. So I think it's generational. When I say generational, I mean with the time has changed. We went from, people of color and not having babies at 16 and getting married at 16 and 17. So they had their children very young. So they grew up with their children. But then we have the next stage where, oh no, wait until you're 30 when you're, grounded a little bit and you can give them sound. Then we had at one time, I think it was in the 90s, people were getting pregnant at 60. It was a big thing of a
Okay.
60-year-old lady having a baby. I just want to know why. Because I found, that I was better younger.
Okay, yeah, it's proven. It's statistics for the most part, but it does depend on the person. Like Willie Allen says,
I was more attentive.
Yes, Willie Allen says it depends on the person. Definitely depends on the person, but according to the statistics, you know how people run data, and I don't know if it's data on all national, ethnic groups or not, but it said pretty much is known for us to have children younger than rather than older. And I'm sure it's some other health reasons too. But listen, let's get some word in from the Roberts. We have Devontae. What is your input on this with how you were parented?
If I had to say it, starting off, I am the firstborn as well. I don't know if the expectations that you had were the same as mine's. Like mine's had rules and regulations, but at the same time, I feel like I was more like let go to live the way I wanted to at the same time at the beginning of my life before my siblings came into the play. So when my siblings came into play, I started taking those regulations and rules a little bit more serious. But at the same time, they were let go with the leniency that I had as well. So I think we were all treated as much equal as we could be. But I, as the oldest, had the expectations to give down to them. And then how I was raised, it was more of a like, hey, this is what you need to do, but do what you feel is right,
Yeah.
So I had a lot of fluent, like how I was raised was very fluent and like given to me the way that I wanted to be brought up. But at the same time, the regulations that my parents wanted to bring me to in the right standpoint of like society standpoints. But at the same time, like I feel like what I would bring to my children is, since I'm a little bit older than in my 20s, of most likely when I get it, because I'm about to turn 30. So I'm not going to be that much younger having kids. I think patience is a attribute that I would have, but at the same time, like in our generation now will be different from the generation back then to when I was a child. So the standpoints that we could have had when we were kids is a lot different, especially now with everyone, especially with what's going on in the world right now. There's not a lot that's going on that we have to really worry about as much as we did back then. But at the same time, there's other worries that we have now that we do back then, if that makes sense.
It's so, different. You're absolutely right.
Exactly.
The concerns are different. Yeah.
I think every generation is going to be different regardless of age range, with having a kid in your 20s or having a kid from 30s and 40s, regardless of that. So even if I had my kid 10 years before now, I think I would have raised them a lot different than I would as I am right now. So
absolutely.
That's what I see as of right now.
Yeah. I concur.
Well, there's like a few type of common ways of discipline when it comes to doing the discipline with our children. Is permissive when you're passive, when you're authoritative, uninvolved. I'm trying to get it out while I'm reading at the same time. Authoritarian, authoritative, passive, and uninvolved. Now, I thought the uninvolved one was kind of weird. I just uninvolved.
I don't know how you be uninvolved when you got children. You have to be involved. But there are some people who are not conscious. So maybe the uninvolved and not conscious, is works together, or is kind of the same thing.
Well, they say it's a low demand and low response and a low distant.
Just
But the authoritative with IVE is warm, caring, but firm. So, and of course, you know what the passive is. They love, but they kind of like, okay, whatever you want, whatever, okay, that type of thing. And the other one, attachment. That's the one I missed. Attachment is you can't let go. You hold on to them. You can't give them no breathing space. You can't. You trying to make them you. In essence.
Yeah, we have someone on, Mr. Willie Allen. He says that this generation requires a lot of patience. I concur.
Well, I think that, to be honest, every generation required a lot of patience. I think that it's case by case, because I felt that in our generation, sometimes there was a lot of impatience as well. You ask, how do you not be involved? A lot of times you had some parents that just wasn't involved. It was like, you do as I say, not as I do. They were busy. They were working. They weren't as involved as they should have been. I think that you have to look at it, working with children every day. It is a case by case. I see involved parents, but I see a lot of parents that's not involved. They're not involved in their education. They're not involved in helping to develop them and give them consistency. So we see it every day. I think that when you set standards for your children and you set expectations and you build a world of respect, parent to child and child to parent, then you get better results. But a lot of times when we were growing up in our generation, you had a lot of yelling, you had a lot of, you just do as I say, and that wasn't always the right thing, because sometimes we had something to say, and a lot of times our parents didn't want to hear what we had to say, which then caused us to be adult people. When people talk to us, we interrupt. We don't know how to let them speak. We don't give them a chance to say what they need to say. We're rude. We have attitudes because we learned behavior. We didn't get taught all the right things. So now we have the next generation, and it trickles down. So you have to look, this generation here it didn't start here. It started from the beginning. It started from our grandparents. We are how many, and now I can't speak for y'all because I'm the firstborn, but in my family, it is what? Before Nana died, it was 5 generations.
Right.
So it started with her, then my mom, then me, then my daughter, then my grandson. So it didn't start with Ryan. It started with Nana. And those learned behaviors go down. And how we are, how our personality is. We develop that from what we learn from
learned behavior. Exactly. Authoritarian. It's authoritarian. That's what that is. It's controlling, it's demanding, low warmth, not a lot of love, but they loved us, but they didn't show that love.
Exactly.
But Devontae was trying to say something. What were you trying to say?
One second, Devontae. But when we are in those type of relationships, sometimes with our own parents, you're right, Vaughn, we trickle and we start to embrace those type of behaviors, and we got to learn how to get rid of those behaviors so we don't keep the generation thing going on.
Exactly. You got to break the cycle. You have to break the cycle.
Devontae, you had something to say?
Yes. So I loved what you were saying. On that standpoint, I do think that's true when it starts off like in the past and it brings down the trickle effect. Even when I was getting raised the way I was growing up, there's always been an expectation. And I always think like even being patient is not the same as having an expectation. You can have either or one of the other. But even that expectation, like me being the oldest, my expectation was always very high. And I even take that even to this day to have the expectations to be the top of my siblings, if that makes any sense.
It
And I
does.
try to be that older sibling to bring them to that expectation that I'm at as well. And it will never be like that, regardless of what age range I am in or what age range they are in. If they're the same age that I am right now in the near future, they still won't have that same expectation. And it's not a negative thing. It is just generational. And
How
it
it has
just,
changed. The change.
yes, exactly. And even in the past of how I acted compared to how my siblings acted, regardless of how we were raised and the patience level that my parents had at the time, it doesn't matter really. It just matters of what's going on in the moment and what has to happen in the future to let the expectations either be how they are now or the expectations of the parent has to change in total. So I don't know.
I don't know.
if
I
have
wouldn't
that
say
same effect.
expectations. I think that parents should have expectations of their children, and they should let their children know what the expectations are. I think that now, my daughter brought something to my attention. Probably in the last few years, the difference is the boundaries. We crossed a lot of boundaries were crossed, because there were none set. They just said what they said, did what they did, and now these children now are young adults, and they have boundaries, and we cross a lot of those boundaries, and which makes them different.
But Leash, I want to add to that, if you don't mind. I love how you put that. So yes, as the generations keep going, you have to refine parenting. But one of the things I'm also learning is don't forget the basics.
Yeah.
No different. You just made that connection with Ryan being like Nana. There are similarities because we share DNA.
Right.
I know what you're doing. I know that manipulative or sneaky little because guess who was that child?
Right.
Like my mom used to say, you did not write the playbook. This ain't nothing
You
new.
just following the plays. Look.
Exactly. Like these are old plays. You just pulling, dusting it off, and you trying to go for a run.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that you have to still keep in play. So it's a never-ending balance of what should we scrap and what
we keep?
Definitely needs to kind of stay, because when my children have children, I'm going to end up looking at them and saying, don't that sound familiar?
Right. And if you don't have that discipline, it's going to affect them in
you have
a whole bunch of areas. We got a lot of comments, ladies. Somebody going to read them? Or?
Okay, so we have oh God. Okay, Mr. Willie Allen is what I see, and he says those tablets make you uninvolved. Well, if you give your kid a tablet, you're going to be uninvolved because their attention is with the tablet. He also says the parents are allowing the tablets, phones to raise their children. Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you know what it does? It brings them a little peace. I just need a little peace and quiet. Astasia Music says balance is always good for a balance is always good for the passive authoritative, etc.
Sorry.
Okay. And then she said, good point, Lady B.
But I think that the thing is, it's something that I want to target in on that Jennifer said. When you know where it comes from, then you know how to deal with it. And the problem is in the family, you got to not be in denial that this is the problem. See, if I'm transparent with my children, so I don't have a problem. And Jennifer will tell you, I done owned up to so much stuff because I want her to own up to stuff, and she wants her children to own up to stuff. So if I have a quick tongue or a bad attitude, I own it because I know where it came from. I know because I live with my mother, And I know how my mother was, and I know how her mother was, and I know that learned behavior is real. So you can't be in denial. You can't say, well, this is just the way I am. No, the only way the cycle gets broken is you got to come out of denial and you got to own it so that it doesn't keep going from generation to generation to generation.
Which also
if
means
low
boundaries.
self-esteem
Set
runs in your
boundaries.
family,
That's true.
well, do I have low self-esteem?
That's
Do I
true.
have good self-esteem?
Right.
If jealousy runs in your
But
family,
let's stick with discipline because that's kind of where we are. Let's kind of try
but,
to
then,
talk.
but even with discipline, a lot of those traits came from how we were treated. Now, I'm going to say this.
All right.
Our parents were disciplined out of the self-esteem of their parent. So that's why I said self-esteem, because it starts there. How you love yourself is how you're going to treat others. So if you don't love yourself, you're going to be mean as an alley cat. So you got to break the cycle. It can't keep going. If you mean and people tell you you mean, you mean. So you have to, you can't discipline out of not love. And a lot of that discipline,
it's a discipline out of anger. People
came out of anger. So that's what I'm saying. You got to do it.
They were taught it. That's what she's saying. They were taught.
Now the new generation, because so much mental is being taught, these kids are coming at you just a little bit different because they're saying, wait a minute. You don't hug, you don't love. All you do is yell, all you do is scream. So that's where the difference is. We couldn't say it to our parents because we're gonna get slapped to the ground.
No, I was running up the stairs, remember?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So it's to identify where it came from and what the problem is, and that will help us discipline a little bit different. Everything doesn't require a spanking. Everything doesn't require.
But is a spanking required at some point? Or we still want the spankings are not happening in a lot of the generation today.
You're right. It's not. But sometimes you don't have to spank when you identify again what the problem is.
Let's give our guests some time. Let's give
Devontae, go ahead, Devontae.
Raising his hand. Go ahead,
Devontae. You in the classroom.
No. Okay, I agree. So with the gentle parenting and the discipline with like physical actions, what I have noticed like in my time of living, regardless of like what the parent is doing, you're in a position of power that is over the child. And what I feel like I would do with my kid in my position of power, I'm not saying be as gentle of a parent as these gentle parenting that they're doing. But like I'm saying that you can still discipline your kid without having to like yell at them or doing all this extra stuff, and they will get the point. And that shows the respect level that y'all were talking about earlier. If you can show your child the respect that they deserve without having to hit them and harm them because they can't fight back, but at the same time, like they will not enact this rebellion nature if you can just show them that you have the power without having to interact in a violent tone. Like I could probably speak to a child as calmly as I can and still let them know like how serious I am at the same time. They will not do that again. You know,
I've done setting boundaries. Now, right now, you set a lot of boundaries. Avery,
but you have to know your child. You have to know your
every child's not going to be the same. You can't handle it.
It's true. You know multiple children. You have to realize they're not all the same. Where you may have one child where you can communicate with and they get it. You might have that one child, as I've heard from somebody, you don't think I love you if I don't put my hands on you, do you? So and sometimes that is a thing with children. They only understand the rod. They only understand tough. They have I have seen some children with some wills that you can't come in. I used to work HR where I was staffing teachers. And I had one school, they would ask me, why you can't staff? I said, because I need a Mrs. Doubtfire. I can't put Mary Poppins in there. They'll eat her alive. These kids need somebody that's from the streets. So you got to know the child you're dealing with. Right. And if you have that strong-willed child, yes, by all means, go through the go-throughs, try to communicate. But sometimes it might take one of those as we like to call it, significant events,
Right.
to finally break through and say and break that will first for them to humble and say, okay.
I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that no more because I don't want that to happen again.
And if I can't, I was one of those children where I had a strong will.
Yeah.
It was tough. And it got to the point where I remember she used to tell me, you'll break before I will. I'm not breaking. And yes, while there was some missing of, I guess you could say, like, you know, the hugs, you can't hug unwillfulness. You can't love that out. Not at that moment. Right now, you in the dirty, you got your gloves up. I got my gloves up. And once we had that last 1-2 punch where I fed, when I threw up the white flag and said, okay, all right, okay, now I can hug you. I bandage your wounds. Now I can begin to talk to you, because now the will, and some children are very willful.
And you know what? I can agree with that, because even being in the classroom with children that are not even my own children, okay? I remember a friend of mine, Jenny Jones, would tell me, Daphne, when you go in that classroom for the first time, you can't be the soft, like you said, Mary Poppins. You cannot. Where we are right now, you cannot. You have to go in there with a certain way and rules and regulations, expectations, and stand on it for the first few months. Because if not, they're going to take over you.
Oh, yeah.
So I do know that you do have to come in sometime, and then you pull back as you get older, pull back as they become more mature, pull back as they understand who has what role in this relationship, right?
That's right.
I'm not your friend. Maybe I could be your friend when we get adults, but we're not friends.
I'm not your friend.
Billy Allen said, I was strict, but very involved. We got a lot of comments, ladies. I just want to jump them in there. Yeah. Go ahead, Lee.
I'm in the generation, we had boundaries. Again, like I said, you have to have boundaries. We had boundaries and expectations.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
We had boundaries and expectations was what we would not cross, or we wouldn't cross over them. Mm-hmm. Estasia, do you have a child? Oh God, I need to really get my glasses. I'm sorry.
That is just like how you used to be.
Oh,
how do you deal with the challenges of that?
How do you deal if you have a child that's like you used to be? Ooh. How do you deal with the challenges of that? Well, you asking the right person.
Ooh, can I take a run at that?
Go ahead, Jen.
First of all, like you were saying, Ma, you got to come out of denial. Nothing like having a child that is a mirror of who you currently are, not who you used to be. I think that's one of the funniest jokes from the Lord himself, when you are actually looking at a little person of you who still does. And I'll just share this. I'll never forget. I was in the car, went to the drive-through, got the food, got the little, dessert on the side. And, I went in my bag and I started eating some of the little dessert. I was like, "What is some good cookie?" And my son said, "Can I have some?" I was like, "You're going to eat your dinner first." He said, "But you're not eating your dinner first."
Who is I saying that what I do?
Well,
and now you got to think about it. Like, so do I be a hypocrite and say, "Well, that's just me because I'm an adult"? He's like, "Okay, so when I become an adult, I can eat cookies and eat my dinner last." Or so I had to own that. I said, "You know what? You're right. We need to eat our dinner first. I'm gonna put this." But it was a humbling experience, because I was like, I could be offended. I'm grown. No, he's right. I need to eat the food first, especially if that's my expectations of you. And if I'm saying that is, air quote, the right thing to do, why am I doing contrary to what I'm teaching you?
Well, I think that the thing is, and it's funny because I too work with children, and I've been working with children for now 40 years. And the amazing thing is when a parent asks me, "How do you get my child to do X, Y, Z?" And I can't get them to do it. And I always say to them, I said, strong, high expectations. I drill it in them. One of the things that I can say, I do not like being embarrassed. So I used to tell my children, where you show up, If you show out, I'm gonna show up. And it's not gonna be good. I say the same thing to my children at the club. I'm like, we having guests. What does that mean? That means we need to use our manners and all our nice words. Exactly. Because you will not embarrass me. And they understand that. So they understand because we do the same thing every day. The same thing every day. One of the problems is there's not enough consistency. Yes. You can't do something on Monday and don't do it on Tuesday.
Change it.
And then don't do it. When you change up on children, that confuses them because they don't know that you which way you want
What's
them
the expectation?
What is consistency is everything. My children knew. What time did you get up in the morning, Jennifer, and talk to God?
Ooh, 5 o'clock in the morning.
And why did you get up
and talk
early?
You got to meet them early
in the morning.
We'd be first in line before everybody else.
Exactly.
Bobby said meet them early.
Every day, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was not an option. We gonna talk to God. We gonna pray, and that's the first thing we're gonna do. Then they knew who had the bathroom time. They had the.
You have to set order. You absolutely have to set order. There's order and there's boundaries. Willie is saying that he's saying each child's different. He said, know your child and treat them accordingly. But use wisdom. And it does take, wisdom. You have to be careful because I cannot treat child number 1 like I treat child number 5. Okay. It's just different because child number 3 is totally different. They're different.
You can't. I don't believe that you can treat them. I don't believe you can treat them the same, but the expectations don't change.
Exactly.
The standard does not change.
Right.
You might have to go a different way a little bit in communicating it, but the standard can't ever change. I have 150 kids every day. I'm not changing my standard for you because you want to flip chairs over. You flip chairs over, you go flip chairs over at home. You can't flip chairs over here. That's the standard. Now, if you hear, I may have to deal with you a little bit different in my communication, but the standard is still the same.
Correct. Avery
says some parents try to be their kids' friends instead of parenting.
I totally agree.
That's true. That's what we were saying. I'm not your little friend. Avery, do you have any input or anything you want to jump in and say?
That's what I was trying to get to, Miss Avery, because she was born, she was raised differently than all of us.
Patience, a little bit more patience. Okay.
Yes, I was raised as a single child, so I grew up basically getting whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, up until a certain point. And even, I'll be honest, at some point, I did live with my mom, who I call my mom, not my birth mom. And I did get kicked out, and then I lived with my birth dad. And it was a completely different experience living with my, who I call mom, versus with my birth dad, because at that age, I had a lot of freedom. This was when I was like 13, 14, and it was kind of weird going from living with her to living with a man, but I had a lot more freedom. And as long as I told the truth of what I was doing and where I was going, really and truly, I never got told no. We would go out and we would have a good time on our own. And sometimes, I would push the buttons, of course, as a teenager. But overall, I really got to do what I wanted, when I wanted, and I was really never restricted in that way.
So Miss Avery just said something.
With both parents,
no, not with both parents. Basically like my teenage years, which in my head are like my most formative years, like when I first got into high school. Those are what I really remember the most, being with like my father. I don't remember too much being with my mom and my grandma, but I remember being with my dad, and it was very loose.
So that she's brought up a very, very good point. The parenting difference between mothers and fathers, be it in separate households, separate households, or in the same household.
Right.
Because the parents are still brought up differently because they were brought up in different households. But the parenting is much different with males than it is with females on every given day.
Right. I never grew up with two parents in the household. I had my mom and my grandma,
Mhm.
and I had my dad. Right. So, or I'm so sorry. I had my dad and my grandma and my mom.
Mom.
And then at some point, my dad was on his own, and that's when I ended up with him. And that was just, it was really different. And it's different seeing how we grew up because we have challenges even in how we react with each other. Because he grew up with siblings and, you know, kind of having to fight for what you want, whereas I grew up alone and I got what I wanted all the time. So those have kind of like clashed heads. And at some point, my dad was working a lot of hours in that time. So I had a lot of time to be alone. And I learned to take care of myself. And there was definitely boundaries and rules and all of that stuff that were set. But I was by myself a lot of the time and kind of learning how to take care of myself and what to do in my boredom. And I feel like that really did kind of raise me in a different light.
And I wasn't alone at all.
That's interesting.
Right.
I was never alone.
Yes, you
I
were.
have
You were alone until the next one came.
What, like
I
3
have
years?
a second
3
question.
years. Yeah, 3 years.
Hey, what do you want?
After that, never alone again.
3 years, you know.
I
they
have a
remember.
second question. So I only have boys. So my question is, do you think it's different? Are you a different parent parenting your girl from your boy? Or do you consider yourself even kill? It doesn't matter the gender.
Okay, so I have boys and girls, and I will say I raised the boundaries were level. You know, we have expectations; they are the same. You know, but I found that I raised my girls just a little bit different. You know, we have been guilty of loving our boys and raising our girls. You know, but I tried really hard to stay mindful of that as I loved my girls and loved my boys. But I think I put a little more of you know, because you a strong Black woman, you know. You a Black woman, you know. But at the same time, I was saying to my son, and my husband was saying to my son, you know, you a Black man, so you know, the expectations are not the same for everybody else. They are, you have to, you know, yours are here and theirs are here. So you always have to do better, you know. So I will say I loved my sons a little bit more than I loved my girls, because I never wanted them to not measure up, not be able to do it, not be able to pull a rabbit out their hat. You know, it just kind of seemed like for men, it's natural, you know, and it's supposed to, and it should happen. But women have always had a hard time. And as a woman, I just wanted them to always be equipped.
Vaughn, I know you got girls and
You
boys.
got boys and girls.
I think that for me, I was a lot harder on Jennifer than I was on my sons. But I think that it was only because when you have the absence of a father, you tend as a woman to have to step into both roles. So I had to become mom and dad. And I think that, you know, I just wanted her to be secure. I didn't want her to have to depend on a man for anything. I wanted her to have her own career, her own job.
Absolutely.
I wanted her to make her own money. And if she met someone that was financially stable, then he would just follow suit. On the other hand, with the boys, I'm not going to say that I smothered them, because I didn't, but I think that I was a little softer on the two youngest ones, and I'll tell them myself. I think that that's why they are the way they are. You know, I trimmed it down a little bit. I tend to find myself doing more for them than I did her. My rules were, you couldn't, once you out, you can't move back in. I took every son back. I should not have. I never took her back. I took the boys back. You know, so it's a lot of things that I did differently with my sons, even though I was still tough. Now you let them tell it I was the baddest
Man.
a mom in the world. You know, they got a different story, but at the same time, they don't realize that they still didn't get nearly what she got. So I think that it is a difference, but I think that when it comes to when you say the difference in men and women, you know, I wish that there had been that father figure, because then it would have taken, I would have been just able to be mom. I would have been able to, and I wouldn't have had a problem with that. I would have been able to step back, nurture, be kind, bake cookies, talk to the kids, you know, a whole lot differently, and let the man step up and be the dad, because that's basically how I think the family should be. But it wasn't that way, so I had to be both.
Right. Willie said we raised our girl a little differently than our son. Devontae, you had something you wanted to share.
Yes. So I grew up with all brothers. So we were all boys in my household. From what I remember, I think we were raised exactly all the same. Like there could have been some like favoritisms in certain standpoints of our life, but for the most part, it was all equal, especially what we were shown and what the expectation was for each of us. But at the same time, every single one of us, there's 4 of us, were completely different in how we lived either before or now. So even when we had these expectations, and we had both parents at the time, and we were shown equal affection for the majority of the time, we literally do not act the same at all. So like, even if you teach your kid one thing, like you could have multiple different kids, we will all get shown different expectations and different standpoints of what you're saying to us from depending on where we are in life. But at the same time, even our personalities and our mindset of where we're at will be completely different. So even though I was only 3 years apart from my first brother, and then 4 apart from the other one, and then 6 from the other one, even the 2 that were only 1 year apart are completely different in what they believe in and what they feel like they were taught in every standpoint of our life from our parents. So
I like what Willie Allen said. He said, I did the opposite with them. Once the son moved out, he was not allowed unless he was medically unable. Well, you know what? It took me, Willie, not a long time to get that concept, because I finally did kick them all out. But they know they all can't come. None of them can come back. And that's the thing. You got to get to that place. And I'm going to share something with you. With the last one, I was not, because he was the baby. And Jennifer will tell you, he was the baby. And I just couldn't find it in my heart to kick my baby out, because he was the baby. But I was strong enough to leave. So what I did was I moved out and left him.
Wow.
I told him, I said, because he told me he was a grown ASS man. And when he said that, I called Jennifer and her husband. I said, I was in my feelings. I said, what? Not my baby. No, he could not have said that to me. And Jennifer and Dan was like, well, what are you going to do? That very next day, I went to the leasing office. I found out legally what I could do. I went and got my own apartment. And she'll tell you, in one whole week, I kicked rocks. And he started crying. He said, where are you going? I'm out of here, dude.
Well,
Willie said 2 men in the house will not work. Will not work. So, Devontae, go ahead.
Just do what you got to do.
So, personally, I don't think that that's very fair. I feel as if in our situation, we did actually have to move back home separately for a couple months. And my dad opened me up with open arms, or welcomed me back with open arms, and his dad did as well. And I just feel as if, like, God forbid, if anything were to ever happen with us, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to be able to figure it out on my own right away. So if my dad were to say, oh, you can't move back home, I would feel very betrayed. Personally. I feel like for my own children, I'd be like,
well, I think the
circumstances,
in a circumstance like that, I think, it would be different. You
Mhm.
know, I think,
So-
you know, if you just got a kid out there, just, you know, hey,
Freeloading.
Yeah,
y'all.
no, I
Let
don't
me
think
go
we need
back
to
home.
stay for free, but like in the circumstances, like, yeah, you can come home, baby. Okay, thank you.
And I
I,
can see
I would take any
that,
of
so
my
open their
boys
doors up to
home.
me, too.
I would take any of my boys back in the house because I'm gonna say that my ex and I have raised 4 solid independent men because they're boys and men, and they would not come back home unless it was detrimental.
Unless they
So
had
I would
to.
definitely bring them open arms. Personally speaking, I want somebody around anyway. So come home.
And see, I'm just the opposite.
But
I
it's
can't.
different.
I can't, and I think that it's an individual. It's an
Yeah.
individual thing because I feel like I am glad that my parents let me know once I was grown, I could not move back home. It made me stronger. It made me independent. I did not depend on them for anything. And so for me, I'm not saying because everybody is different, but I believe that once
Put it
your
back.
sons move out, they need to be men. They need to figure it out.
So
That's
if
just
you don't,
me. That's
if
just
you don't,
me.
I'm gonna add something to that if you don't mind. Once again, we come back full circle. You gotta know who you're dealing with.
Right.
And you gotta know where your family lineage is.
Yes.
So I'm gonna speak from our lineage, our family. We have a very codependent. I'm scared. Hold me. Give me my passy. Because even as
Exactly.
yes, I see it in my sons. My 7-year-old is like the only one looking for mommy at Taekwondo, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Kick!" So you gotta know what's in your lineage, and you gotta ask yourself: bringing them back, am I enabling them? Am I
Right.
handicapping them?
Are you helping?
Exactly.
Are you helping?
And I'll never forget when I was at basic training, I was only 17. And literally day 2, I had mentally quit. I was like, this ain't for me. I made the wrong decision. And as soon as they give me the phone, I'm calling my mother and I'm telling her I'm running away and just let the door open. And I'll never forget that phone call. I called her and I was like, Mom, I quit. They say if you want to quit, all you gotta do is raise your hand.
I raised my hand.
And I'll never forget this lady said, "Oh no, you can't quit. I already boxed up your things." I said, "No, it's not working out. It's not work." She said, "No, baby, no. Go there. Go ask the man in the hat. Say sorry, apologize, and see if you can make it right." And I'll never forget. She came to my graduation, y'all. She had all my stuff. I was the only person who had boxes. And I looked at her. I was like, "Why did you box up my stuff?" She said, "I can't do this to you." She said, there's a stronghold that you're trying to grip onto, because Lord knows, had she not put me out, I'd be 40 living with her. It's not I can't even say it's my brother's time. It's just that's what's in us. We're the I don't want to be
The
pushed
clean
the
type.
next.
Just
Yes.
the clean type.
Okay.
And if I'm being honest, even now, this is the first time me and her lived in different states. All the states I went to was following Vine. Where
But
you want to
ain't
go
going out
next?
there. It's too cold
Wherever
out
my
there.
mother is. So
Where's my mommy?
exactly. So for us to say, "Hey, this ain't healthy. You have to.
Right.
You're married now. You got a family. There's
Yeah.
things that you can't uproot your husband and kids and go where I'm going." And so that's something you got to look at. And I agree with you, Avery. I don't want my kids to ever feel like they don't have a home, but not at the detriment of them stunting your growth and you're not willing to take the passy out your mouth.
Yeah.
If that
Being
makes sense.
mature about the situation. Devontae. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hey, okay, so going off of both y'all points, me being myself, I tried so hard to be able to leave out of my parents' household. At the age of 18, I left as fast as I could. And I'm the type of person to try to like do my own things by myself. And like my mom said, I will never in my life, like if I were to come to my parents, that's because it's the absolute last resort.
Last
But that has
resort.
nothing
Yeah.
to do with also my siblings. I feel like me taking it more serious than my siblings, because this is what happened. So my dad and mom they had different teaching methods. My dad at the time taught me like, hey, if something were to happen to me and your mom, what would you do in that circumstance?
Mm-hmm.
What could you have done? Like if we never existed or if we died the next day, what would we do? What would you do? And I took that very serious, but my other siblings did not. So
Yeah,
like,
I didn't take it serious.
I took that serious and I learned from those. I literally have done everything that I have achieved to this day and everything I've done past being with my parents, I have done on my own, and I get advice from them, but I have tried to strive for it on my own. And even if I were to not have them, which I'm glad I do, I would be able to survive on my own. But that does not speak for my other siblings, because at the time, them being younger, maybe, or because they didn't take it seriously at the time because of different personalities, they would literally not take those same precautions that I did or feel the same way. Like they would, like, not saying
Generational.
but it's generational. So
now.
training or teaching your kid at the time, like at a young age till their adult life, is what you need to do, and not just push that at the very end. So when they're 18, oh, you're not coming back, that kind of stuff. But if you teach them from like 7 and forward, like, hey, if something were to happen, make this decision, and then I will help you out on this journey that you're taking until you're an adult. But at the same time, try to make your own decisions at the time. And then if you need the guidance, I will be here for you. That's what I feel like is the best thing. And that's one thing that I took from my parents that I will bring to my kids.
Okay.
I will literally let them know, I'm your guide. I'm your guide in life, but try to see what you would do before you come to me. And I think that comes with a certain, yes. And I think that would come maybe in the middle school age is when that's when they're actually in tune with themselves to be able to make those types of decisions. But at the same time, it just depends on what kid they are.
But I think I love what you said,
Dee.
I love what you said, because a lot of times as parents, we feel like we had, and I used to be guilty of it. I used to think I had to fix it. Now, I wasn't that way with Jennifer, but I was that way with my sons. So they had the mommy syndrome. I need you to fix it. And every time they needed me to fix it, I would fix it. But now I don't fix nothing. So when they live where y'all live, Jennifer tell you, I ain't fixing a thing. I'm gonna check totally out, because I realize that their mentality is, Mom, if my sons had it their way, they all be right here in Minnesota, sitting here looking at me, because that's how they think. They got mommy. I want my mommy. And they're probably mad because I got married and moved all the way to Minnesota. But the thing is, you got to know your children. Now, if they were responsible and they had a situation, I totally agree. Yes, you can come, but they not that way. They gonna come and they never gonna leave. And I'm gonna be looking at them till they 50, 60, and I'm gonna be 90. That's not an option.
Yes, boundaries. I love
boundaries. You got boundaries.
You know, all the discipline.
Get it together. You got 4 months.
Yeah, all the discipline that we give our children, it really takes a toll on them completely being the adult that they need to be self-sufficient. And it goes from being physically exercising, eating, communication, socialization skills, education, career. It all plays a part. The discipline, to me, is the first part when you're nurturing a child, to me.
Absolutely.
Astasia said, I think the kindness and open arms are taken for granted and abused. That's when the door gets closed. Nope. Willie said, they are upstanding men. Talking about my boys, I guess, when I said that. And he
and mine.
Okay. Yeah. I think I had said something that's when he said that a while ago. But guys, this has been great. I mean, I just want to hear a little bit more from each one of y'all, kind of to sum it up, because we're at 8:59. And so I just want to hear either something, whatever you want to share that's on your heart concerning parenting. I want you to just share it, whatever that may be. Jennifer?
So we talk about setting boundaries. I just want to leave you with a way to set boundaries, because I've heard that a lot of times with people, whether it's a spousal relationship, work, mother, daughter, sons, we talk about set boundaries, but the answer to how to set the boundaries, one, you have to have non-negotiables in any relationship that you're in. My number one non-negotiable with my children and with everyone in this house, actually, I don't deal with liars. You want to see somebody check out and be done, lie to me. I don't care how
There you
bad
go.
it is. I don't care if you committed murder. I want to know. Don't and not just with the honesty, the transparency. I shouldn't have to pull it out of you. We're family because I don't judge. We're not judging in this household. So that is something that and Ryan to tell you, soon as he lied, yeah, you getting that rod because that you broke a non-negotiable. You made a decision, and that's a hard no. It's not gonna get excused. We're not gonna Dr. Phil it. We're not gonna talk it out. It should be above everything else. Tell me the truth. You all that's all, and I tell them, even when you leave this house, all you'll ever owe me is the truth. That's it. So I just wanted to leave you with that in case you're wondering, how do we set those boundaries? What are your non-negotiables?
Okay. Avery and Devontae?
Yes, ma'am. I feel as if something that's going to be a non-negotiable once we have kids, which we are currently working on with each other, is being an open household. I'll be honest, I felt as if growing up, I couldn't really say how I felt. And I never really expressed my feelings or let them out in any way. And that's something that we're running into with communication. And that's something that I want to have with my children is you can say what you have to say, as long as it's respectful, of course.
There you go.
But whatever you're feeling, I want you to be able to say it. And I want you to be able to express it because I don't want you to grow up and not know how to communicate how you feel.
There you go.
Because that's something that, of course, like I said, I dealt with, and I don't want them to feel that way. So that's something that we're working on and that we will have in our household when we have children is open communication, express how you feel at all times.
Devontae?
Oh, same thing.
Pick something different.
I mean, at the same time, like I have both of those same points that y'all said. I like the open communication. I think like the difference between me and her, like she said, she didn't get to say anything she felt like she wanted to say in her feelings. And in my household, I feel like we expressed everything we wanted to say. It, regardless, respectful or not, we said we wanted to say, especially with me and my siblings. But I think to take from where I grew up and to put towards my kids, I want them to feel like as comfortable as they can. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't as comfortable, but I can say there's certain aspects of my life where I wasn't as comfortable to go to my parents before like a friend maybe. And I want them to like, even though I know y'all said like, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent, but at the same time, I want to be that person they go to first, regardless of being their parent and that aspect. So like if they had like a question or maybe like a point in their life where they don't understand, I probably, or she probably have been in that point of their life that they can go to, and we can either give them the advice that we learned in our time in our life since we've been alive for more than they have been. But at the same time, like we can give them that advice and either they take it or they don't. We're still open to that communication regardless of what's going on.
Gotcha. Great gut nuggets. I love it. Vaughn?
I would say that have a balance, you know. I think I sent my children something last year, and it kind of, I was looking for it. It kind of said that if I had an opportunity to do it again, I would listen more. I would love more. I would give more hugs. I would have more fun. I think that the scale has to be balanced. It can't be where it's one-sided. You have to know when to discipline, but you have to know when to give that hug. You got to know when to give that ear. You got to know when to pull back and let them grow up and make some of their own mistakes and their own choices. But it has to be a balance. Too much of one thing is not good. So balance the scale as a parent and know when, because it's something that I think the gentleman said with the children being on the phone and the tablets, but parents need to put their phone and their tablets down too and learn to listen to what their children are saying, because these children, the things that I hear, I'm a mentor. I listen to so many things every single day, and we need to really, really go back to just taking the time out to listen to what our youth has to say, because they're hurting. They shouldn't have to go and talk to their teachers. They shouldn't have to go and talk to the after school people. They should be able to talk to their parents. You're not being their friend, but you're showing them that you care.
Concern. Lee?
Well, with that being said, I concur with everything everybody else has said. And just on that one point, sometimes children are just not going to come to their parents with everything. Mm-hmm. They're going to go to their friends, and the parents may be the second choice. And sometimes as parents, we have to pay enough attention and know our children to know when something's just not quite right. Wait a minute, that's a little off. Come in, let me talk to you. Just come in, give me sometimes a hug makes everything spill. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a little attention, a conversation. I remember taking my daughter to, it's going to be me and you. We're going to breakfast. Mm-hmm. Now, mm-hmm. Mind you, I got 3 of them. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So she know who I'm talking about. And before I knew it, her guts was on the table, and it was just, I think we were just tippy-toeing around things. But I think that if we show enough love and enough gentleness and enough sternness when it is, when it's needed, it's a balance. It's just a balance. But I would never say let your children do whatever they want when they want.
True. I think this was a great conversation, a needed conversation. I love all the input, the expectations we need to have with our children in parenting, the boundaries and non-negotiables, the love. I agree with Vaughn with that, and everything else, the hugs, the vocal, the voice, the speaking up, the quality time, traditions, keeping that. We're missing that family time at the table. Oh
yeah.
Tablets down and eating at the table. You know what I mean? So I think that for me, I've learned a lot from this. I don't know about anybody else. Some things I'm going to start implementing, even though my kids are boys and men and grown, but I may have some grandchildren and so forth, but I still can implement it. And we all have a voice, but it's just how you present your voice.
Yeah, yes. I like that.
So, but yeah, ladies, thank you, Tess, Javante, Avery, Jen. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And of course, this is the what?
Blessings. And of course, we are the
like and share.
Yeah, we are the. Great. Go ahead, Vaughn. Put your 4 up.
For life, cousins for life. Thank you. Love you guys.